Welcome to Center of Light. Om Sri Sadam Guru Devadatta. Center of Light Foundation, your station for divine unfoldment and reinforcement. Center of Light is being reinforced by the divine. There is a God-man on the earth today. His name is Swamiji Viswayogi. Let me show you who he is. Check him out. This is Swamiji. On your left, you see what looks like could be Moses sitting on this throne. And in the center, Swami walking as if he's gliding on water. And all the way to the right, you see Swamiji sitting in this chair with this light phenomena coming from his body. This is not Photoshop. Please do not desecrate the sacred. So this is what's going on with Center of Light Foundation by being spiritually supported by Swamiji. He gave me the blessing the other night. Go forth, Keith, and do this thing. So I said, grateful. Welcome to Center of Light tonight. My guest is Mr. Dale Allen Hoffman, and we're going to be speaking about some of his work. I came across Dale on YouTube a while back. Really enjoyed his word crafting, his place he comes from inside where he delivers his passion, his fire. So much so, I sent him an email, and time went by, and he finally contacted me, and he said, how about tomorrow? I said, let's do it. And here he is. Welcome to Center of Light. Let me get my little notes here. Dale, I've been posting Dale's websites and merch and YouTubes and these forums. Go stomp all over his page, make a big stank. Let him know you're ready to get into the navigating the cosmic shift. Reverend Dale Allen Hoffman is an ancient Aramaic wisdom keeper, mystic, an energetic healer revealing long-suppressed ancient secrets and healing modalities. Dale's childhood was punctuated by profound experiences of paranormal and natural phenomena, extraterrestrial visitations, and spiritual epiphanies. For over 30 years, Dale has been what many call the teacher behind the teachers. Gotta love that. Since coining the term Aramaic Toning in the early 1990s, Dale is the frequent go-to authority for many well-known spiritual teachers, celebrities, business icons, musicians, etc. We're going to talk about some of his music as well. On how to awaken the experiential, I love, one of my favorite words is core. On how to awaken the experiential core of ancient teachings in the most practical ways possible. He is regarded as one of the world's foremost authorities on the incredible transformational power of the ancient Aramaic energetic alchemy teachings of Yeshua. For those who don't know that, it would be Jesus and Magdalene. And for those who don't know, possible wife gave birth. We'll leave that for another time. Possible. And they're original to that. There's more, guys. Look in the room. You'll see his full bio. Check him out. My brother Dale, welcome to Center of Light Radio.
Thank you, Keith. It's awesome to be here. Yeah, a couple of long hairs on the loose.
Fantastic. How's life treating you, bro? How you treating life?
Amazing. I mean, you know, I'm always in this like expansion mode, even more so than ever now, and it's interesting to be really feeling like this while it feels like a lot of forces, a lot of the world, whatever that means, is kind of moving like that at the same time. So navigating those kinds of energies, it's been interesting. That's one way to put it.
I love the way you crafted that, sir. Absolutely. It's a matter of having done something for so long, you have a state of balance and equilibrium about yourself. In other words, you know, when 2000 came in, things got wonky real quick, and everybody's walking on this rickety rope bridge.
Yeah.
And some of them had a little more intuitive, natural skills to be balanced, but others, it really, you know, that rope bridge turned over. How are you doing it?
You know, I'm at a, like, it's been like for a few months now where I've realized that I've been sort of focusing a lot on letting people know, look, keep walking, keep your eyes on the horizon, keep going. And I've realized that really when these energy flows get really heavy or intense the way they have been, what's most important is that we're able to stay grounded. We're able to be rooted. We're able to be aware of the rise and fall of our breath, and realize, like I say, to navigate the cosmic shift, we're literally the grounding rods for humanity. So being able to allow the resonance, the processing of incredible amounts of energy. Funny, I back in my late teens, early 20s, I spent a lot of time around, well, not just musicians, but guys like Wayne Dyer and Stuart Wilde, different people like that, real close to a guy named Richie Havens, that played Woodstock. I've always been around the people, like I sort of gravitated to the ones that were sort of moving vast amounts of energy, is one good way to put it. But I remember Stuart telling me way back, I guess I was maybe 22, Stuart Wilde was like, it's like we got thrown down into the grossness of matter, into the underworld, and we're being able to like navigate in a swimming pool. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. It's like a swimming pool. And then all of a sudden, like in the last few years, it starts feeling like, oh, it's like starting to turn into like Jello. So now I really have to be open. I've really got to be able to have that maximum fluidity within the grossness of matter. And then it's like the last few months, it's like, oh, the Jello's turning to paste. Okay. So it's like it's all about really just being open and not biting the hooks of the divine play, the cosmic drama, as Yogananda would call it, not easy.
Yeah, the Leela is not so
Yes,
funny
absolutely.
when you're unaware, but when you're aware, you can we learn how to get out of the riddle.
Yeah.
Because for the longest time the joke is always on us, so to speak. And when we learn how to step in and out of this cosmic give and take, to and fro, hither and thither dance, it gets a little easy.
Yeah, Yogananda was like, he talked about transferring our sense of identity from the pseudo soul or ego. Ego is a Koine Greek word that all it means is individualized self. It's almost like a safety mechanism, but to become the ever joyous witness of a stupendous cosmic drama. And it's like, wow, so I can be the character in the movie. Funny, my wife and I came back from Europe a couple weeks ago, and I'm watching a movie on this little screen this big. It was The Big Lebowski, of course, because I am an official Dudist priest in the Church of Latter-day Dude. And that's true, actually. But
I love it.
watching this movie, like on a little screen on the seat in front of me, and every once in a while, as tiny as it was, the frame would fall away, and I'd be in there, and I'm right there with the dude and Jesus and all these different people, and then I'd go, whoa, hold on a second, like I'm watching a little tiny screen here. I'm not actually in the movie. But imagine if you're surrounded by it, and it's above you, and it's seemingly behind you. And imagine that you're so fully immersed in it that it's even easier to forget that you're in a movie. But when you wake up and you start to realize, hold on, I can shift this and I can move this from here to here. And I'm not just one of the characters, I'm all of the characters. All of a sudden you start realizing that what you're looking for is what is looking. And when that started uncovering for me, I can't say life was just easier, but it sure was clearer in so many
Was this
things.
what happened when you were 7 years old?
Well, when I was 7, there was so much happened that year. It was 1979. And I mean, I had an experience literally it was vacation Bible school. And I used to spend all this time outside in the woods. My parents had just gone through a really intense divorce. And we were my brother and sister and I were kind of flopped, side to side, like take sides, etc., which I didn't want to do. I was the peacemaker. So I spent all my time out in the woods, out in nature, encountering beings, encountering phenomena that some of it I still understand, or I get today. Some I still don't know exactly what happened, but I was at in a Methodist church that I grew up in, and they were in vacation Bible school. It was like June or July of 79. And all the kids and the teacher are talking about, like, lay up for yourself treasures in heaven where moth and rust do not destroy in the Bible, talking about Jesus. And I'm like, I was confused because everybody's talking about heaven as like this place you go to after you die. And I'm like, well, yeah, I've seen him mention that a couple of times, but it sure as heck didn't say that all the time. To me, it seemed like he was talking about something, even as a 7-year-old. I'm like, it seems like we should be living more for now rather than some kind of, what I would now call brownie points in the future. And I remember looking down at the Bible, which is sitting on my bookshelf in my office here, and that exact Bible. And all of a sudden, I literally saw, the only way I can explain it is like layers within the page. Like I'm looking down at the words, and within that, there's different languages. There was 4 different languages besides the English in layers, kind of indented, almost like an outline in different colors. And
Would it be fair to say it was an encryption of some sort?
Yeah,
Obviously, it's encrypted
it's funny. I
beyond the
mean, it
normal.
was like I was seeing codes almost, and what I would at least say now is that, and encryption's a very good way to put that. And I looked down and I realized there was like a glow to the page. I remember putting my hand over it. I didn't feel any heat. And I'm just staring down at this page. I'm not really comprehending what I'm seeing. And then I look up and I realize the room is dark and there's nobody in it. And I'm going, and I hear voices, and I remember looking toward my left, and the teacher was there. And she's in the doorway, and I realized all the kids are outside in the hall, and she had turned the light out, and she's looking at me, and I'm assuming my face was white as a ghost because I didn't know what was going on. And she looked at me like I was guilty, and she was like, "Are you coming?" She was this one kid's mom, one kid that was in the class. And I'm like, and I remember standing up, walking down the hallway, walking down the brick steps, going to the back of the church to this like baseball diamond. And I'm looking around at the trees. And it's like the trees were whistling, but there wasn't a whistle. There was like these dancing lights, but there was no lights. The best way I could explain it is almost like I sort of got my little stereophonic back in the 70s tuned in perfectly to the sound that I thought was great. And then someone just comes and pulls a blanket off of the speakers that I didn't know was there. So now I identify that as presence. And there's this openness and hypersensitivity, hyper awareness. And I look over at the lady, the teacher, and she's still looking at me like, what did that kid do? Like, I know I look like I got my hand caught in a cookie jar. But that was the beginning of experiences that I was having in the woods with animals. I was having visitations, everything from extraterrestrial to transdimensional. I was having these Jesus experiences that I had nobody to talk to about this stuff, to be honest. I mean, I remember one time I heard Sammy Hagar talking about at one point, I think he was younger in his life, and he had all these great experiences like with his father when his father passed and they found him dead under a park bench. All these different things happened. But I remember him talking about waking up and some kind of being was in his bedroom and it had him hooked up to some kind of device. And there was like some kind of craft like a quarter of a mile down the road, and there was like a cable running to it. And he had this distinct memory of that. And the odd thing about that is I'm like, wait a second, that's some of the stuff that was happening to me. These beings would show up, the walls would become like Wonder Woman's invisible jet. I'd see the walls of the house, but they'd be like glassine. And I didn't know what any of that was. I would wake up with marks in my arm and feel little things in there. That happened 3 separate times. Even to this day, all that hasn't been totally clarified for me, but I did realize that I didn't talk about this stuff much until my first book came out. I realized something was different and I didn't have anybody to talk to about it until I was in my 20s. I had friends that were in their 80s and 90s that I finally could talk to about these things. And they're like, you're not as weird as you think you are, and I'm like, oh, well, maybe good, maybe not. But, it's been an interesting life, to say the least.
Wow, bro. Let me ask you this. We talked a little bit in the green room about you being a musician. Is that something that you took too early in life, or?
Oh, yeah. I was, 10 years old. I didn't really start, I guess you could say, woodshedding on guitar until I was 12.
Woodshedding.
When I was 10, my mother got me this like Sears Roebuck $30 special where the strings are like 5 feet off the neck and, off the fretboard. And So I learned the hard way, and I'm plodding through classic rock, 70s rock, early 80s stuff. And finally I went out and got like a Les Paul knockoff. And it was amazing because when I started with a super, super distortion, is that a Seymour Duncan pickup? But anyway,
It is.
I or maybe it was a DiMarzio. But anyway, and all of a sudden that's it. I'm full on, and I'm playing like every waking moment of my day. I'm able to express things that I couldn't express in words. And then by the time I'm 15, I'm playing with bands with guys that are in their 20s. And I'm like this bizarre little hotshot guitar player. It's funny when people hear like what I'm doing now and they haven't seen me in 20 or 30 years. They're like, all right, wait a second. Dale's doing what? The guy that would like play guitar with his teeth, light his guitars on fire, have dummy amps on stage that he would kick over and knock over a la Pete Townsend. I mean, I was always doing this crazy stuff. And they're like, he's doing what now? And they're like, it's going to take me some time to come into, because I didn't really talk about it I had one friend, my friend Mike, that I've known for 40 years as of the summer. But even some of my other best friends I couldn't talk to because I would mention Jesus or the Bible, and I wasn't religious in that sense. And they would go, like literally make these vomiting sounds. So I kept to myself about it. But I kept at it. And the music, though, intriguingly, even now, like as I speak, when I'm in front of a group of people, it's my awareness of the energy, of the ecstasy, of the rise and fall of music, of everything from extreme metal down to Eric Satie, or like really amazing classical. That I felt blessed that my music teacher, even in kindergarten, was brilliant enough to introduce me to classical music through cartoons. So, Let Me Cut Your Mop and all that, Bugs Bunny, Looney Tunes, all that.
All right.
And all of a sudden I'm like getting into like the William Tell Overture and Stravinsky's Firebird Suite and all this stuff when I was really young. And it took me a while to realize that the spirituality, the music, all of that was just interpenetrated on so many levels.
Absolutely. When I play with some of the super groups that I play with, that I'm blessed to, after about 5 songs, and you fall inside, I take my shoes off.
Oh, yeah.
When I get into that cave, not only because of me, because everybody's settled in, and we played before throughout the years, and we're just doing this one-off gig kind of thing. It doesn't matter the band. But when you get into that spot, you can feel the oversoul, the overlord, as it moves, wins its way through all the musicians. And in that place, it's like, being a bass player, and I do a lick, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and the drummer just mirrors it completely. It's like, we begin to feel this sort of energy. It's like, it's easy because being an artist, as we are, and other people in their own right, when we do what we love and we fall into the space, it's like those things we do are just vehicles to the gate, to the ecstasy, to the bliss that's always there.
Absolutely. Funny, you were talking about like the groove, and I think of times when like I'll like sort of have my wife, I'll like force her. I'm like, come on, we're going to listen to Miles, and I'll put on Kind of Blue. And we've got like a 5.1 surround sound, funny with the big, huge, big 65-inch 4K TV. And it's great to watch movies on it. But I actually bought the TV and the surround sound system to watch concerts and to listen to music. And I'll sit there listening to, like, as an example, like, Neil Young, like After the Gold Rush, or Harvest, especially when autumn comes around. I'm addicted to Harvest, and I'll put that on, and I'm literally sitting there as if I'm in the studio with him. And you listen to it in high res, you can hear him when he moves the stool. You can hear the slightest little things. And I'm just like, all of my God bumps are up all over. And I'll sort of look over at her, and she'll be like, yeah, it's cool. It's nice. And I'm like, don't you get it? I'm like, oh my God. It's like I'm mainlining from the cosmos right now. Wait, listen, he's going to cough. Oh, there's the cough, Oh, it's amazing. I feel so richly blessed by music because it allows me to make sense of a world that makes no sense in so many ways. And the toning, when that started coming into my life, not it was I think even if I wasn't a musician it would have, but when I started realizing I could use just my own voice to shift my awareness in a matter of 2 or 3 seconds, and it was like whoa. And I was doing that when I was a kid laying back in streams, and there was this, I've got a whole a book called The Tunnel, or a chapter called The Tunnel of Streaming Light in my book, and I talked about it was this like a, not a cul-de-sac, what do they call it? A culvert, like an irrigation tunnel that goes under the road between our house and the farm across the street. And I would sit in this thing, and it had these ridges, and I would go, whoa. But because of all the ridges, all these different voices would come back, and I'd lose sense of which voice was leaving and which one's coming back. And I'd have these epic experience, and I'm sitting crisscross applesauce Indian style, meaning lotus, but I didn't know it was lotus. And I would sit in the woods and listen to the music of nature, again in the lotus position, like I say, Indian style. I didn't know it was lotus. I didn't know I was meditating. I didn't know what I was doing. I just was communing with nature, and I'd be out there in the beauty and the silence, and then I'd come back and I'd lay back and I'd put Kiss Alive 2 on, and I'd lay back on the floor in my basement with these monster speakers surrounding my head. I would have one on each side and 2 on top, and I would just lay there as if it was like the hottest bed in the world, Kiss, and my body would light up. And all of that, like as I speak and as I write and as all these different modes of creation are happening, the music's always there. It's always there.
Do you do just guitar? Do you play other instruments as well?
I mean, I play guitar, bass. I dabbled with. There was a point in the late 80s when I was just finishing up high school and was literally living in a recording studio. And I mean, we were literally having the time of our. I'll have to send you some of the recordings, the stuff that I was writing back then. Stuff that I couldn't play now if I tried. Like my fingers just won't do that anymore. And it's amazing when you're in that moment and you're all lit up and you do these superhuman things, and it can happen live when you're in the pocket, when you're in the zone. And if you're just trying to sit there and play it flippantly, it just doesn't happen. But then I didn't play almost for 20 years, barely played for 20 years until COVID hit. And I'm like, okay, break out the guitars. I ordered a new custom electric, all these other things. But I had to train my fingers to do things again. And then there's a little bit of arthritis in there now. So, but the good thing about that is I was this like speed demon back in the 80s in a lot of ways. And it really got me. Now I'm so much more mindful in what I'm playing, and I'm so much more aware of that. And being around guys, like I had a friend who passed in 97. We named our son Mikey after him. His name was Michael Hedges, and Michael was this dear sweet soul. I would several times was able to sit backstage with him. This is the guy that pioneered the whole 2-handed acoustic guitar technique that everybody's doing now. And sadly, most of the kids now don't even know his name. And Michael was like this alien, like space cadet. We would drink these massive things of like carrot apple juice and all this green stuff. And I'd be like, what's in it? He's like, just drink it. But Michael had such a deep reverence for, like I say, the music of life. And the other people, like Richie was another one, Richie Havens, he was kind of like a second father to me for so long. It's like, I still wear a lot of essential oils because of Richie's influence. And it's like, for me, music is more than an escape. It makes more sense than anything. It's like the mathematics of the universe, really, in all senses, right back to close and
it's reality.
Third kind,
It's reality. It's a river. It's a conscious river that moves.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit. Everyone, tonight my guest is Dale Allen Hoffman, and we're talking about some of his books, some of his experiences. Tonight he titled Navigating the Cosmic Shift. Let's talk a little bit about that if we could, Dale, as well as toning, as well as breathing.
Breathing's important. Well, I mean, just starting with navigating the cosmic shift, it's something I've been saying for about 20 years. I've been saying, we are the ones we've been waiting for. A lot of people say that, I'm saying we are the ones we've been waiting for. And it's so clear when you start getting the true insight that we chose to be here at this exact moment in human history to help navigate the cosmic shift. And people will be like, what's the cosmic shift? I'm like, well, every every relationship we have, even with the idea, is conceptual, and yet we've all sensed that this was going to happen. And it's funny, if you go back to like YouTube videos of mine there's one that we put up like a year ago that actually was recorded 11 years ago in 2011. And I was in Texas, and the minister there, Reverend Ellen Davenport in Wimberley, Texas, like between Austin and San Antonio, she's like, "What do you see for the future? How do you think things are going to get bad?" And I'm like, "Well, for me, I really see almost like we're like the classic idea of a frog in a pot of water." And like, it's going to be not something pointed like everybody was expecting in 2012, but almost like this sea change where it was coming from everywhere simultaneously. And then all of a sudden we were going to realize, oh, this is more full on than I realized. We were expecting these sort of jagged shifts, but with this kind of, whether it's the Kali Yuga, whether we're getting to the end of an oblong sort of like hairpin curve, like on a roller coaster, whether it's something that I call equidistant expansion, where I feel like I keep having these visions where everything's, I have my Hoberman sphere, everything's expanding equidistantly, kind of like what's called an expansionary constant with the Big Bang. But it's like, if everything's expanding at the same rate, I'm going to look at everything around me, I'm not going to see anything different, because everything is still equidistant to each other, space-wise, size-wise, but I'm going to feel some kind of, and of course, this is the theory. We don't know exactly what's happening. That being said, something's obviously happening. And for me, I'm going to jump past the toning, come back to that, but the breathing for me, just being aware of my breath, being aware of the rise and fall, and it's funny that it took me sort of going sideways into Buddhism quite deeply in the early 90s after I graduated high school, and especially Thich Nhat Hanh. And of course, I love all of the, Alan Watts, everybody that I was so floored by. But the thing about Thich Nhat Hanh, he was so beautifully crystalline and simple. And here it is, I got this book, Being Peace. It's the year 1990. Still playing ear-splitting music. And I read this book, and the guy says, breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I smile. Dwelling in the present moment, I know this is a wonderful moment. And all of a sudden, I'm 7 years old again. And all of a sudden, I'm sort of in the womb again. And I started realizing already at the age of 17, 18, I was already rushing through my life and not really paying attention. As much as the music is amazing and all the spiritual pursuits I was already in, I was like, whoa, hold on a second here. And I started really paying attention to those deeper aspects of how, somebody pulls out in front of you on the road. What's the first thing you do? You lock up your breath. You find out that there was a shooting in South Texas. You lock your breath. Someone says, someone that you love was just tragically killed. You lock your breath. And I thought, whoa, hold on a second here. If I can have these kinds of experiences, and maybe even if the breath does catch, to be aware of that, and to get that breath moving again and be able to ride the rise and the fall of that, all of a sudden that takes me into a whole different way of seeing the world, of experiencing everything. And when you take that word in Aramaic, translated as spirit, that word in Aramaic, that word is rucha. And what it actually means is vibration or frequency. It's more accurately the word breath. So you can actually take the word spirit when Jesus would say that. And even in Latin, spiritus meant breath. But we forget that. We turned it into this thing that we don't know what it means. But that's breath, that's energy, that's heartbeat, that's magnetism, that's electromagnetism, that's gravity, that's movement of wind, etc. So it's funny when you start going deeper into that, all of a sudden I realize, what does it really mean to live a spiritual life? It just means really to pay attention.
Be aware.
Yeah.
Just
Wake
be
up,
aware.
be mindful.
And the breath does
it really
that.
is that simple.
Yeah, and the breath brings you to become a greater spectator. You can see a bigger picture so that when you do involve yourself, you become of a greater influence.
Yeah.
It's beautiful to live in this fire. I call it a fire.
Yeah.
It's a
I love
holy
fire, clarity, action. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
What's that, my son?
When
My
you
friend?
said fire, clarity, action. I love that.
Yeah,
And it's right above my head here. It's beautiful. It's the
that,
first time
that,
I
thank
saw
you.
it. Funny because
Thank
like
you that,
a buddy of
go ahead,
mine's
sir.
he calls one of his production companies. What is it? Fire without heat. I can't remember what light without heat. I can't remember what Steve calls his. I think it's light without heat or something like that. And we've had so many conversations about it. But yeah.
Awesome. Oh, that what I was going to tell you was share with you the fire clarity action that has to do with this spiritual name Yanava. The Y has a zero in it, means nothing. The center, the cosmic womb, as you said a minute ago. The N is the knots, the mind, the linear, and the backbone is taking action. So we have fire, clarity, and action, and with these three aspects of ourself,
That's beautiful.
you just unfold into this beautiful mess of infinite possibility.
Well, it's funny because, like the Koine Greek word chaos, people talk about turning chaos into some kind of order. And I'm like, actually, it already is in order. Chaos is actually when we realize that order. We unpack the codes. We unpack we see the encryption, as you mentioned earlier. Then it's no longer chaos. It's now cosmos. But that's something that's always, I remember one time Wayne Dyer had said to me, he's like, I was just having I could call him at any point in the office, and Maya, who was his agent, she would, if he was available, she'd put him on. And I remember one time I just wasn't having the best time. Things were challenging. And he was like, well, maybe you're kind of squatting down to leap up to another paradigm shift. But I talked about my life being chaos, and I remember him. I hear his voice in my ear. He's like, well, think of it this way. He was like, you used to live in New York, right? And I'm like, yeah, I lived in the East Village. And he's like, well, imagine you go down to Wall Street and you get there at like 15 minutes to 9 a.m. and stand near any of the subway outlets. What is it going to be? And I'm like, it's going to look like ants. It's going to look like chaos. He's like, right. And he's like, what about after 5? Just a few minutes after 5. I'm like, it's going to look like chaos again. And he's like, but is it really chaos? I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, do you think all those people are just wandering around aimlessly? He's like, I'm pretty sure they know exactly where they're coming from and where they're going to. He was like, that's not chaos then, is it? And I'm like, no. He's like, it's just an unrecognized order. And I went, whoa. So he's like, he was saying, I'm trying to see, you couldn't see the forest for the trees. I'm focusing in so much on little things and grokking little details to the point where I was almost choking my life, rather than being able to pull back, being aware of my breath and see the big picture, even if I cognitively had no way of understanding what it was. But I'd be able to comprehend on that level where I had that experience of OMFG, even though I didn't have words for it. And that's where the toning really came in for me as well. A lot of times.
Let me pause you there, my friend. Let me add this and ask you.
Something.
Let me ask you this question, my friend. I love that. It's definitely, if you want to expand your consciousness, your awareness about yourself, breath is the catalyst to do that. It opens you up, it keeps you present, it helps you to soften up all those wonderful qualities. But I used to do this program, lack of a better word, many years ago called rebirthing, using breath deliberately and powerfully.
It's hyperventilation is what it is.
People say, how long do you think it takes? It takes however long it takes. It can take 2 hours. Do you think it's hyperventilating? Because I tell you what, the experience I had on
it just means hyperventilate means is you're breathing, in an expanded state, hyper state.
Right.
Is what it actually is. It's a form of breath that Leonard Orr developed rebirthing. Right. But it actually goes back thousands of years. We don't even know where it comes from. So it's something we work with. My version of it we call the Ruka method, essentially, and it goes back. The Etruscans did it. Saint Teresa of Avila did it. Yogananda did it. Muktananda, Sri Yabba Dabba Doo of Bedrock did it. All the great spiritual masters, in different forms. And it's interesting for me because being in the room as my children were being born, that is the exact breath my wife was doing. And when my mother passed from cancer back in 2007, she was not in the fast sense, but that connected breathing. And in a non-traumatic death, that's how we naturally come in. And that's also in a non-traumatic way, how we naturally go out. And it's amazing just having it connected. And of course, the longer the breath is, it's like sort of in the words of John Wayne, you're taking the long way around the barn. But when you speed that up, things are going to move even faster. So
I can tell you how many times I've laid on the floor just like butter in utter bliss after doing a rebirthing session.
Oh, yeah.
I had some pretty conscious shift experiences. At first it felt a little wonky, just trying to navigate through the cosmic shift, the conscious shift.
Oh, yeah.
But eventually, getting out the way, letting things happen as they want to happen naturally, creates an amazing integration. Let's talk a little bit about toning. When I was in India, Dale, I went to see Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai Baba, who came to me in a dream and said, come see me. And I said, how will I do this? He said, don't worry about it. I got it. 2 weeks later, I get a phone call from a lady I never met, offering me a first-class round-trip ticket to go to India. Word got to me, I'm a flight attendant. I got some companion passes. They're about to expire. Can I give you a ticket? So I went to India for 2 weeks. And while I'm there, second, third day, once I'm settled in on the ashram, just kind of feeling my whole energy in my spot, my place. And they're doing this toning of Om 21 times. So I'm sitting there, it's pretty cool, 35,000+ people, right? And they're ringing this gold bell, bang, 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 3 hits, and they go in this Om. Powerful with this level of consciousness toning. A few days later, I found out about this little event called Super Bartham. There's this little room in the core of the temple, and I didn't know it was there. One day I'm running, and I said, what's in there? He said, this is Super Bartham. Long story short, he says, come check it out tomorrow morning. Got there, they ushered us in, and we began to go into that, whatever the ritual is for that room. But when the multi-thousand mass people began to tone, it was all funneled into this room.
Wow.
Bro, my body began to melt off of what I thought was me. It was disappearing because of this toning. And it lasted for however 21 good length tone mantras would last.
Wow.
Let's talk about toning. How have you experienced it and the power it has for you? And, being a musician, we know that sound creates form.
Oh, absolutely. Sound is form. Really, sound is the basis of everything. And, now I see it clear. I mean, it's something I've been doing since I was a kid. Kids do it, the children do it. But when I really got deep, and now all these years later, I realize, it's been a while now that I've realized that I don't know of any other technique, spiritual or otherwise, anything that will get a newbie, meaning somebody who's never done it before, to have a shift in how they feel in their state of being faster than toning. Not breath work, not meditation, there's no other kinds of yoga, none of it that I'm aware of, that if somebody's never done it before, they're going to, sure, if you've been meditating for a long time, you can get right there in half a second. But if you haven't, I don't know of anything other than just going, oh, like 3 seconds of an ah sound, and I literally feel very different than I did. But then when I put even a little bit more into it, it's an entirely different world. Now. And I'm using a combination of breathing, which is part of it. I'm meditating, which means to focus on something, and also the tones themselves. And when I started applying like ancient languages, especially the Aramaic, to the toning, and digging deeper into, the Egyptian. I always have the Eye of Ra on, funny enough, and the Tree of Life. I just gave my Tree of Life to the Stone Circle at Avebury when I was there in the UK a few weeks ago. So my Tree of Life is not on, but instead of wearing a Christian cross, I wear the Eye of Ra and a Semitic Tree of Life, just to remind me that the cross is somewhere in the middle of that without addicting onto the religion part of it. But it's incredible. It says, like, Yeshua, before he would heal, he would say Ith Fatach, which is funny because Ith Fatach is the patah sound in Aramaic, means open, and it means to be open. But even funnier, most people don't realize that Ptah is an ancient Egyptian god. Not really going to go into that here. And here is invoking this Egyptian god. But it also said he would look up toward, this is in the Bible, he would look up toward the heavens, look up toward Shemaiah, which is the same word as sky, which is our 11-year-old's name. And he would look up and he would make an audible tone, an audible sigh. When you start looking in the Pistis Sophia, it literally says that he would put his hands up and look to the sky and tone. And it's funny that in the culture back then, it was quite common. And then, of course, it got pushed off as being heretical and Gnostic and all those other kinds of things. And crazy enough, it was actually preserved in Sufism, which is now a mystic leg of Islam, which at that time was actually connected to Christianity. And it was actually preserved better in even more modern ideas like Rastafarianism. All these other places preserved the toning where Christianity, basically strangled it out. And it's amazing, though, those simple tones, like if I just use like a simple phrase, like the beginning of the Gospel of John, Bereshit etowihwa milta, wahau milta, etowihwa loetalaha, walaha etowihwa hal milta. There's this vibrational thing that's happening, and if you start looking at the letters, you can define it by letters rather than words, and each of the letters had a particular meaning that were expressed through hand signals and sounds that connect in with Egyptian and Proto-Semitic and all these other languages. And I went down all these different wormholes until I started realizing, wait, these aren't really wormholes. This stuff's all connected. It's all connected together. And then you look at, Abraham in Hebrew Aramaic, what was his original name? It was Abram. It was Father Ram. Well, that's Kashmiri. That's not even Hebrew, his original name. So now we're going back over to India again. And it's funny because it took me a while to realize that the people that were the supposed biblical experts didn't have a slight clue about any of this. Bless their hearts. I love them all dearly. And there's some amazing ones out there. John Shelby Spong, Marcus Borg, bless his heart, Elaine Pagels. There's some great scholars out there. But the ones that the official Christian church holds up as experts are the ones that they indoctrinated. And all this other stuff that was there 2,000 years ago had been stripped away, and it had been bought and sold and written on a piece of paper as the Word of God, when 2,000 years ago, something written on a page as the Word of God would have been considered a blasphemy. The Word of God is what speaks as you, through you. It's what wakes you up in the middle of the night with the amazing ideas. So there's just so many layers to it and so many different directions. It just shoots out all over the place.
Earlier, you were talking about how energy is expanding exponentially. Absolutely. But do you think it's also turning within itself? In other words, it's not only just expanding out, it's just it's tumbling, closing the dryer.
Well, it's funny because there's the RNA, DNA. There's so many. I can go off into so many directions right now. Let me calm myself down.
I mean, we're spinning on a rock. We're spinning on a rock through a solar system. This is revolving around the galaxy. Absolutely. Everything is turning, burning, churning, yearning for infinite, the land of infinite possibility.
And these
God knows what kind of speed.
It's all so. Like you go to guys like Brian Greene, or there's certain people that are on such a cutting edge with what's really happening. Not that we really have a clue, but what's amazing in all of that for me is that when my heart's open, I'm really able to realize that when I'm really at the core, when I'm totally and completely present right now at the center point, and my awareness is open, I'm also simultaneously surfing the leading edge of the cosmos. Right. It's like being fully here now is what takes me out to the leading edge. and puts me out there on the edge of the expanse, and it's all twisting and turning. It's like we have ideas like the eye of the needle, or Yeshua would say, I am the gate. Without even going into the word I am, he wasn't talking about himself very clearly. But all of these ideas, the word gate is tareya. What it actually means is portal. But what's funny is, literally, the way he was teaching was that we live life inside out and backward. What we're looking at is the insides outside, and we don't realize that in order to sort of get through the wormhole, in order to get through the gate, I do this in my retreats or in my mentoring program where I work one-on-one with people. In order to be able to get through that, number one, it's not a masculine thing. It's not in front of you. You don't see it. You actually get there by being wholly, fully in the present moment. There's certain ways to use your breath, to use tones. And when you least expect it, the way I say it is she sort of comes up behind you and puts her arms around you, and it's almost like falling backward off a cliff with your eyes closed, and you kind of pop inside out and backward into who you really are. So it's almost like, and that, the first shall be last, the last shall be first. The inside is the outside's the inside. In the Gospel of Thomas, they're like, tell us how our end will come. And he's like, have you actually found the beginning, that now you're looking for the end? He said, blessed is the one who takes their place in the beginning at the head, the present moment, for they will know the end, which is also the head, and they will not taste death, because they will no longer be lost in time and space. They will be space itself. But it's all there. It's all right in front of our face.
It's sort of like Islam, a spiritual spiritual dyslexia.
What's that?
It's a spiritual dyslexia.
Very much. That's a perfect way of putting it, actually. Put it on a shirt.
It's like, we think, the hand's in the glove. We're not sure exactly. Or are we the hand that's in the glove, or are we the skin itself, the skin of the glove? And I think we're making miles. We've done very well through COVID. I mean, who else would come to Earth and do this ridiculous shit, right?
Yeah.
I like we talked about in the green room, I believe. My experience of that period 2 years ago, I really flowered for myself in that time, and I'm grateful because of it. Blessings while other people didn't do so well. So right.
Yeah. For me, it number one, it allowed me to kind of step off the train that I'd already kind of getting off of, like from being out on the road too long away from my family. But what's amazing is it allowed me to go full circle and realize that I had been, sort of in my head, there was this idea of a destination, that I had to get to that destination before I could really put my focus back onto playing guitar again and playing music again and all these other things. And then I get to this point where it's like, well, what the hell else are you going to do, Dale? You have no schedule. I was still doing one-on-one calls and stuff like that. So I sat down and I started playing guitar again. And it's funny because for years, my wife or friends of mine they would always be like, oh my God, have you ever heard Dale play guitar? And they're like, no, I've been around him for 10 years. I've never heard him play a single time. And it was interesting because people would say no, they'd be like, you play guitar. And I'm like, no, yeah, kind of. But, and it was, I almost want to cry because I closed a huge chunk of my soul off by not running my fingers across those strings for a long time. I kind of told myself I'm going to have to go to a certain place with this before I really go back to that. And then it's like, why do you have to, and then I realized, oh my God, so funny. And I start playing guitar, and I was playing just 12 hours a day during COVID sometimes. And then all of a sudden,
wow. That's a lot of playing,
like I was
bro.
30 years ago.
How was your wrist? Your wrist was
literally,
okay?
I'm sitting there. I'm like Eddie Van Halen. Like the guy couldn't eat dinner. He would have to eat with one hand while he had the other one, on the guitar. Eddie literally had a studio in his bathroom. And, he would sit there playing guitar with one hand while he's sitting on the john. I mean, I'm not that extreme, but that's kind of crazy. But it really opened me up to this architecture that had been there for me that I kind of closed off. And I started seeing even more on a vibration and frequency level, even more on the music of the cosmos and all of this. and it really started shifting things. And all of a sudden, my toning processes started going into a totally different place. And it was like, and I started, and I don't regret the time of not playing, because coming back is so sweet. But if it's like I can't, I don't allow myself to think of where I could be on some level as far as technique if I hadn't stopped. But the thing is, coming back was so, it's kind of like when people ask me, why should humanity fall asleep? And I'm like, because waking up is so damn amazing, going, oh my God, I've been sleeping. Right. I'm Rip Van Winkle. My beard is 53 feet long, it's great to wake up, but, wow. And I mean, if I just like flip, like I said, I've got guitars all over the office here. And it's nice to be able to just sit here and just pick one up and like noodle off a couple of notes or something like that. Or I'll just go out and sit on my front porch. I live in the middle of West Asheville, North Carolina, and we got a couch on the front porch, and I'll just lay back and just start playing. It was a joy that I shut out of my life. Yeah. And I'm not going to do that again. So,
like we talked about earlier, you and I, I'm at the place where I'm definitely going to exit for a while. Truly. Yeah. Like we talked, I've done it for years. I still love it. I play once a month live, twice a month live with a bass and a rock band. And it's cool when I'm there, and after about, 7 or 8 songs, I'm like, I just don't feel that luster anymore. So maybe I need to go into the cave for a while and kind of forget it's there. And maybe I come out breathing again and supporting its presence. And it's a gift to be able to sit and create. Did you create a lot of music?
Not so much during COVID.
Just in general, over the course of your life.
Rediscovery. And like it's funny, like when you don't play for a long time, creativity, it wasn't really in my fingers functioning. That's fine. All that. It was almost like allowing yourself to dream again. And I mean, Cert is going and playing a song. Sure. No problem. I can, blow out Hendrix or whatever, Zeppelin or something. But it's like, it's funny, like about maybe a year ago, I posted a video of me from like 88 or 89 with a couple of my friends playing Heartbreaker from Zeppelin. And I was playing the guitar solo, although I couldn't do the bend behind the nut. I had to use my whammy bar because it was a locking nut. But anyway, just this random video in the middle of all this Aramaic stuff and ancient texts. And then all of a sudden, here's this skinny kid with a 32 fret custom guitar, this crazy guitar that I was playing, and doing all this crazy shredding stuff, on this like classic rock song. And it was funny. People were texting me going like, I had no idea you could play like that. And I'm like, yeah, I kind of forgot myself, but it's amazing though, to walk away and come back and see it with fresh eyes and not, just really to be able to appreciate it. And it's just, oh, and people are always, everybody's constantly like, oh, you should join a band. And I'm like, I have that urge to want to rock out on stage. But when it actually comes to like joining a band and doing all the work of all that kind of stuff, I don't know if I want to right now. But I do crank it up and get the lead out from time to time. But I'm going to start putting some videos out there of me. Like I've got like a little Les Paul that's like, a 1.5 feet long. That's like tuned up to, I can't remember what I think it's either A or B. I think it's A. It's like a 5th fret on the guitar. And I mean, you can like really go crazy on that thing. I've got custom electronics that I put into it. I went and rebuilt the wiring in my guitars, put a Screaming Demon in my one of my older guitars and stuff, the George Lynch pickup. And it was just great. It was like but simultaneously while all that's happening, I started ruminating about being 7 years old and all the spiritual experiences I was happening. And COVID, I mean, we actually got it around Christmas, and it wasn't a fun thing. But even that had a certain blessing to it because we were flat on our backs for 3 days, and it forced me to kind of stop and just lay there. And thank God we made it through. A lot of people didn't. So I'd love to say, wouldn't love to say. I mean, I know I could probably say 2020 was an awful year. It was definitely different, but honestly, the experience of it slowed me down, and in a lot of ways, I woke up whole new levels of my being. So, very much so.
Brother, what's coming down the future for you? What do you got going?
Well, man, the hard part for me is not focusing. It's I have so many ideas. What I'd love to do is write some more books, but the thing is, I've been so busy, I haven't really been able to and I've got lots of ideas for those, including one called Navigating the Cosmic Shift. But what I've been doing right now is focusing in on my mentoring program. That's where I work one-on-one with people. There's stuff about that on my website. But I'm also in the process of I've been studying filmmaking, starting to move without doing much in my videos yet, although I put one out a couple of days that had a lot of those qualities, the toning one from Glastonbury, but starting to move toward turning as an example, starting with the videos on YouTube from being just a talking head to me filming all this different footage and making them little mini films with like a sort of a subject in each one. And then
I mean to offer this while I'm thinking about it. This is what do you call that? A timestamp.
Mm-hmm.
Remind me when we're done. I have something for you. I want to send you two links to some. We'll talk about that later.
Awesome. So yeah, I mean, I just it's a combination of that, and I got to say too, this isn't exactly work related, but in a way it is. My beautiful wife is like 3 weeks away from giving birth to what would be our fourth child, but our oldest daughter, who turned 23 today, her and her husband, despite how much they've been trying, blah, blah, I don't want to hear that about my kid, but they haven't been able to have a baby. So this is mine and my wife Loretta's baby. She's going to be born in a few weeks, but our daughter and her husband will be raising her as their own. So, I mean, that's a big shift that's coming right there. But in terms of my work, what I'm really starting to focus in on is I've got several, like I kind of experimented last year with an Introduction to Aramaic Toning video course. I'm going to start doing a bit more of those and getting a lot of my works, out there, basically on the video level, because I've already got like 30 CDs worth of audio programs because I recorded everything I did. So when magic happened, I had it. And then it got to a point where it's like, Dale, I think you have enough audio programs. So then I started now focusing on video. We got a retreat coming up in July in North Georgia, the North Georgia mountains. We're going to be doing like water blessing at the base of a 100-foot waterfall, the intensive breath work that we do. It's like a 4-day, 3-night complete total exit from the world. We're actually even going to get people's commitment to not go on the internet or text for at least Friday and Saturday of that weekend. Commit to be totally off the grid in that sense. And it's like, if you have an emergency, somebody can get a hold of the retreat center and you'll be fine, just like before you had a cell phone. But that's going to be a pretty powerful. That
sounds interesting, man.
That's awesome. It's the third weekend in July. It's the weekend of the feast day of Mary Magdalene, and it's actually called the Second Coming of the Magdalene Fire, which is what I really view the second coming of Christ, not in the level of even of a person, obviously, but on the level of all of us, but bringing the feminine back and bringing the feminine fire back, because that feminine fire terrified men 2,000 years ago. It still does now. And, it became 99.9% Jesus, and the rest was everybody else, including the women. Mary Magdalene was pushed off to the side. She was called a slut. Mother Mary was pushed off to the side. The only way she could actually conceive was if it was immaculate. All these things happened that, that's the only way they could talk about the feminine. Well, obviously the feminine is coming back into balance now, and I'm honored to be in the middle of helping people.
It's the sweet spot.
Aware of it. Oh, absolutely.
It's the sweet spot.
Absolutely.
It's the zone. It's the sandwich. It's what we all really want. Well, we are it, but we just gotta find a way to stretch the mind open and get the monkey out. And I don't mean kill the monkey, right? You can't kill the monkey. You don't want to kill anything. Just understand who you are from soul to bones. And what's that, my brother?
It's like people are like, I want ego death. I'm like, yeah, then you're going to be walking out in front of vehicles in the street and you're going to slobber on yourself in the grocery store. Right. As a matter of fact, you won't be in the grocery store. You'll be sitting in a chair staring at the wall. So I don't think you want an ego death. No, you just want to have a more healthy relationship. That's a little closer to what you're looking at. So
I enjoyed my time with you, bro.
It's awesome.
Come back anytime. Center of Light group that I think you joined today has a large audience. Please feel free to use that room as if it belongs to you, because it does.
Awesome. Cool.
Hang out with me a second. Got a minute?
Absolutely.
Everyone, tonight, my guest tonight is Mr. Dale Allen Hoffman. We've been speaking some about his book, some about this, some about that. Ultimately, believe it or not, we've been speaking about you, me, we, all, the one and all in the one. 4 things that exist, you can never change. You exist, you can never change that. What you give out, you get back. One is the all is the one, and nothing ever change. The only thing that will never change is change itself. It's not really that hard. Try a little too hard, you overshoot your spiritual objective, your target. Where are you going? You ain't going anywhere, my friend. Except further within. See you soon.